and welcome to the second session for the Platinum sponsors. We had a first group done yesterday, which included Welshman Keen, Speedcast, SES, Maisie Australia, and Communications Data Group. And from our perspective, we really want to say thank you to the Platinum sponsors, and we want to give them an opportunity to say a bit more than they usually get to say at the PITA AGMs. And with the benefit of the virtual platforms we're using, we're looking to pre-record your presentations, and hopefully we use them as lead-in discussions during the PITA meeting AGM proper next week. But I want to welcome our next panel of speakers. Alistair Benson for Pacific Broadband Satellites, Joseph Sidiak from Telstra, Sharon Cassidy for Docomo Pacific, and Sharon happens to be an executive committee member of the PITA executive. Robert Schuber, who has been a player with PITA for many, many years with Intelsat, and Kong Ban Yip for WCC Group. So how we're going to play this, you'll get 5 to 6 minutes to provide some insights and perspectives of what you believe is the new norm and what your companies are looking at playing in the new domain that we have post-COVID-19. I'm getting sick of that term. But we all do know and accept that the world is not going to be the same as it was prior, and we have to do things differently. So I'd like to ask you to stick to your 5 minutes. We'll try and get through the round within that 5 minute period. And if we have time, we can discuss the perspectives and insights that you present and see how we can build upon them. So I'd like to ask Alistair to start off.
Hi, Phil. Yeah, thanks very much for the introduction and I guess the introduction to the new norm and what we're experiencing. I think what we're looking at now is probably the best example of the new norm. I work for a company that's based in Singapore and has regular international travel, or should do. I haven't actually met any of my team members face-to-face in the last 9 months that I've been with the company, which is a very new world for a salesperson. Pacific has really realised that this is the new norm and this is how we do things. So what we've done is we've expanded our reach and some of the products that we offer to some of our customers, enabling healthcare centres, schools, etc., to start getting better connected in this world. We realised that with the chance of lockdown being more frequent and more random, that there needs to be a world that we look at and have the ability to connect people and connect those people at very short notice via any means possible. And in a lot of the markets that we operate in, there isn't a lot of options for those people to actually connect to their end users, from whether or not they've reached for a doctor, a school, whatever they happen to be going through. And that's one thing that's really important to us, is bridging the digital divide and making sure that our customers and our end users get connected where they need to, whether it be the case of medical emergency, a school lesson, whatever have you. I think the world as we know it, and we've seen this in recent days, is that we're seeing bubbles open up. We're not seeing international travel en masse. And I looked at a documentary or a bit of an overview of how airline travel has changed. And for a lot of our Pacific Island neighbours, the world previously used to be, if you had a serious injury, if you had a serious accident, you were flown to New Zealand. At this point, that's not really an option in most cases. And you see it with the likes of Papua New Guinea to Australia, you know, a lot of the same things would have happened. But now we're seeing a world where doctors are coming on board, they're working with e-health, they're teaching people from afar, whether or not they'll be teaching medical students, or whether or not they're teaching students, school students. And I think this is the world that we've got to come to exist. And the way we've got to look at this is start figuring out how people can connect, how they can connect better, and how they can make better use of the technology that's out there. Because there is a technology through a number of the players, both on this call and in the wider markets, that have the ability to connect end users, but it hasn't necessarily been used the most effective way. So for us, I think it's a case that we've got to figure out how to roll this technology out in a more efficient manner. And what that means is overcoming a lot of the roadblocks that we've seen that are put up with us, or put up in front of us, especially in our Pacific Island neighbours. We've got to figure out how we can work with the local governments, the local ministries, the churches, the schools, and the health centres, as I said, to connect these people to ensure that the right people are getting the right connectivity when they need it. I think that's been one of the biggest problems, and that's something that Pacific has had to change dramatically, and how it operates and how it handles things. And the fact that 18 months ago, the thought of the 6 of us or being locked down in very remote regions was a pipe dream. No one ever thought that would happen. No one ever thought that was the case. And as we evolve on and go through things, I think we just need to figure out how to be smarter about things. And that being smarter is where are our priority people? Where's the priority members of the public? How do we connect them and how do we do that faster? For Pacific, that's an ever-growing challenge that changes day to day. I still don't think after 18 months we have the perfect silver bullet for that. But I think where we are getting is we're getting to a lot better stage where we know our customers know what they need. They know that the internet is no longer a luxury. It's a requirement that people need to have. And it's been something that we've been passionate about from the start. For us, it's now implementing that same product at speed. I think that's where we see the new world going to. How we overcome that, like I said, the silver bullet we're still working on. I'm pretty sure everyone's still working on. But I think we know what we need to do. We don't know how we need to do it. And that's not been finalised yet. That's not been worked through. But I think we are getting there. We're seeing the likes of our products being rolled out to numerous health centres, numerous schools across numerous Pacific Islands, and at speed. And more and more as we go down, the lockdown happens more and more frequently as we see flare-ups in different countries. We're seeing that our customers and our resellers can adapt to fulfill the customer's needs to look after the end user. I think that's probably where I see the new norm, and ultimately the new norm for people like us. So having these conversations and having these meetings is what we're doing exactly now. I think this will become a more accepted way. Although there'll be a lot of business that'll still be done face to face. I've also done a lot of business over my time at Pacific through this medium. So we need to become more and more, and that goes back to bridging that digital divide and making sure that customers are covered and they're connected wherever they happen to be. I think that's my view on the world.
Thank you, Alistair. You must have been watching a clock. That was 5 minutes spot on.
I'm not going to lie. I'm sitting here looking at my phone and there's a clock in the header. Hey, you gave me a timeline to stick by, so I'm trying to do it.
This is unbelievable for a PITA meeting. Everybody's on the button. They're interesting perspective, and I can understand how the salespeople find it a real challenge without the ability to have the face-to-face and those real close conversations. So Joseph, you're up next, probably representing the biggest telco member of PITA, and you probably have the biggest challenges.
We do have very big challenges and quite significant as well, mainly from a network perspective, given that our network is very expansive, both domestically and globally, and also from a people perspective and the sheer volume of staff that we've got located across the world. So for us, the key themes, I think, are around flexibility, agility, being able to adapt and move resources or move network or infrastructure to cater for that demand, particularly as various countries or regions go in and come out of lockdown. So we need to be prepared and make sure that we've got the people, the infrastructure, and the resources available. So it has been quite challenging. I think when COVID or when the pandemic first hit and we went into lockdown in Australia, as an example, we pretty much had to stand up some essential services over a weekend. And so that meant having to deploy staff and resources that weren't available just to help our health services cater for those impacts. We also saw Australia shift to online learning. So the schools were closed, and then that was a massive task in itself, being able to have the infrastructure as well as the tools to help our education system cater for that, as well as our students as well. What we've seen as well is that our obviously network use has increased, and I think it's increased by about 20% compared to previous periods. So that obviously adds a lot of pressure on ensuring that the network is up. It has the momentum. It's catering for those spikes in traffic, and we continue to see those spikes in traffic, especially from video conferencing. What we're doing now, obviously, a lot of that has increased, as well as people at home trying to keep themselves occupied. So we've seen gaming as well increase, and that also has different peaks. And we need to ensure that we're catering for that demand and making sure that the network is stable and providing that consistency of service. So it's been, I don't know if fun's the right word to use. It's been exciting in a sense. It's been challenging. It's had its issues, but it's how you come together, I guess, as a team. Not only within Telstra, but we found that partnering with our suppliers, with our competitors even, to be able to deliver when customers have asked us to deliver, and really moving quickly. For an organisation as big as Telstra, we don't always move as quickly as we would like to, but we've seen that the pandemic has seen a shift in our business, our processes, our procedures, to be able to cater for the changes that the pandemic has brought about. Similar to what Alistair said in terms of having to be there for your customers and be there for your own teams, that's been quite interesting and challenging. You know, in the Pacific Islands, we like to build relationships through face-to-face interaction. I'm not a big fan of email, to be honest. I don't think it adds that extra personalization, I guess, or that relationship building that you do that we have face to face. So having to shift the mentality and mindset when it comes to being in sales and selling and working through the distance and being on webinars for most of the day has been interesting. I too haven't seen a lot of my staff. I've got some staff up in Asia that I haven't been able to see for about 14 months physically. And even in Sydney, I've got team members that haven't been into the office because our office is still not fully operational for about 14 months or so. So that has been interesting, but I guess we use a lot of collaboration tools now that we have never used before, and that's accelerated the use. Microsoft Teams, Cisco WebEx, Zoom, and everything else that's possibly out there or that's come into the market. You know, people are being innovative. We're seeing an increased use of apps through LinkedIn and being able to connect that way, which has also been interesting, but also another thing that you need to be on top of and be mindful of. So yeah, it's been quite an interesting 12 to 14 months, and hopefully over the next, hopefully there is I think the world may have changed a little bit for the better as we become a little bit more human and talk to each other a little bit more and collaborate through forums like this.
Yeah, thanks, Joseph. You sort of posed the question: has it been fun? Actually, it's been bloody exciting. You're having conversations that you never would have dreamed of having, 2 years, 18 months ago. You're suddenly, your business plans are basically worthless. And you've got to relook at the whole business model with a totally different perspective.
Very true.
Yeah. And it'll be interesting to see what Sharon's perspective on this is from Docomo.
Well, I think what I'm going to do is probably echo a lot of the things that Alistair and Joseph said. Many of the things that we thought, like Alistair said, 18 months ago, we would have never dreamed of, to have our offices shut down and having to work from home and being able to pivot that quickly. It was a challenge, and we were able to step up to it. Call center all was able to be able to transition from home, and all of that happened quickly. We had our online schooling start to happen, and as Joseph mentioned, we had an increase in internet. So the demand for internet went up as, not just one person is working from home. If you've got multiple kids, you've got kids online at school, and you're trying to manage your day doing that. And so we saw an increase from just a residential perspective. And then, of course, we had federal funding coming in for the federal government, where we were also able to provide some of the public schools. So, just being able to figure out what price plans we can put together and doing that type of stuff and coming up with out of the box solutions for them. I think that's kind of where the fun and exciting part came in for us. And sometimes not always fun because there was a time that you had to meet it within. But it's been an interesting year. And I wish I could say that I see the end of it. We still are experiencing quarantine. So me being on the carrier wholesale side, I also handle the roaming market. And tourism is a big thing for me for all of my islands, for Guam and the Northern Marianas. And to see absolutely no incoming tourist traffic, I mean, that hurts a lot. And, we've had a team that has really thought through how they were going to strategize that. And a lot of it was in contractual agreements, right? Extending agreements and commitments versus saying that we were just going to take it as a hit this year. So a lot of kind of out of the box thinking this year. And then going into the next fiscal year, we're also trying to figure out what do we do, as we expand our 5G market and our 5G footprint here in the Marianas. Are there solutions that we can come up with for our customers? Because it's not just residential for us. Enterprise is working from home as well. So we've got to think about reliability and be able to be all things, because we're not just, a mobile provider. We're a quad play provider. We're doing entertainment. We're doing our lifeline services and making sure that we've got everybody connected. So it's been a challenging year. And I think we've stepped up to it, but I'm looking forward to what we've got coming in the next year or two, because I just see so much change, as you say, whether it be in the satellite market or the wholesale side when it comes to capacity requirements. None of that has changed. The growth model actually has caused us to escalate a lot of what our strategy is going to be. So we've had to increase capacity going in both directions, because we're kind of in that North Pacific region where, we've got great access to the US, but we also have really great access to Hong Kong and Japan and Singapore. And with all these cable systems landing, we're seeing, continued development and new opportunities, things that maybe we would have missed if we weren't, so focused on how we're going to continue to grow in this kind of outside the norm, but our new norm.
Yeah. I probably, from a similar economic perspective, have a lot of empathy for Guam as well. Tourism was our mainstay, and overnight you lose 20% of your market, which probably contributes 30% of your margin. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel at the moment. The border restrictions seem to be just stretching on and on and on. Yeah. When I first looked at this, we thought it would be a 6-month downturn. 18 months, it's still going, and still unlikely to be resolved in before the end of the year, specifically. And we've seen the same thing. We've seen demand go up, and to feed all these the consequences of lockdowns, but your top line ain't going up. Your margins are totally eroded. And one thing we've really had to focus on is the welfare of our staff, because when the economy shrinks by that much, everybody's worrying about a different type of stress. And your HR teams really have to pivot around the business and look at the staff first and foremost. Interesting. And things you didn't really think about, 18 months prior to that.
Yeah, I mean, I would have never thought that we were putting every single person that arrives on Guam in a hotel for 2 weeks before we can release them. It's hampered us on a business perspective, and then also from a shipping perspective. As we need to deploy new solutions and we're waiting for equipment to come in to be able to do that, we've got to take into account the new lead times that we have. That before were bad, but now it's becoming even more challenging.
Yep. So Robert, What have you got for us?
Hi. Hi, Phil. Hi to Alistair, Joseph, Sharon, and how are you all? I trust you're all well. Thanks for the opportunity to have a chat. Really building on upon what you've just said, Sharon, I think that if we reflect 12, 14 months ago now, things were, moving along quite normally. I reflect on March. In January we started hearing about this virus, and then all of a sudden in March, the doors begin to close around us, the windows begin to close around us, and we find ourselves quarantined, working from home. The interesting thing about that was the state of readiness that our own organisation had, or perhaps every single Pacific ISP, telco and mobile network operator had, around being prepared for an event like this. In many of our previous PITA events, we've always discussed business continuity, disaster recovery, but we always thought about cables breaking or microwave towers being bent due to a cyclone or something along those lines, but never a virus and what that would mean to our business. And when I think about its effects, it affected us with projects which were ongoing, which were being deployed, and clearly for projects which were being developed and ready to be endorsed and put into situ. Now, with all of that, what we found ourselves, and I think every single telco, ISP, MNO would agree to this, was a complete lack of preparedness in a scenario where all of a sudden we couldn't fly in skilled labour into the country, or we couldn't fly even get people to get on a little boat to the next island or the next atoll. All forms of logistics were restricted. So getting skilled labour into complete projects really, began to awaken people to the fact that within each of our own businesses, we need to build up a skilled Indigenous labour force, a skill set that kind of shields us from the advent of losing skill sets by virtue of quarantine. Not only did we find ourselves being locked down from the perspective of being able to bring in skilled labour, but Sharon, you pointed to the fact of getting equipment shipped into locations. Sure, they could land into a major port, but then distributing that further to another location and getting that commissioned became another enormous challenge. And again, it all centres around our preparedness in an environment like this. What I saw, however, in all of this was, as most of the experience, was an absolute growth in the consumer market. I think, Alistair, you mentioned schools, health clinics, those social elements of our countries became extremely reliant on broadband and in communications. And that, again, really, I suppose, sent messages to the leadership of each of our individual countries and right across the Pacific that it was important to have still connected broadband, but it was imperative to have a Wi-Fi hotspot in a community for the village. How else could we deal with understanding deaths, births, marriages, all of those important e-government applications all of a sudden became almost impossible to get your head around. So I think that the coronavirus and the new norm has kind of woken a lot of stakeholders up to the facts of it. We've got to be more prepared. We can't just be waiting and hoping that our normal business plan that rolls around every single year will be executed as we normally have, because a virus comes along and everything changes very, very quickly. In terms of some of the things that I saw with our business community, especially the media market, which is so heavily reliant on satellite as well, their business was hurt. We heard about tourism being affected deeply, but if you were in the media business and you were out there chasing advertising dollars, and it was important for you to showcase sporting events from around the world. Those sporting events all disappeared. Those special news reports, which required 15 minutes or 30 minutes of broadcast time, they all disappeared. So our media industry right across the world was significantly hampered and hurt by what was the virus. And so tourism one, media another, a reawakening of the importance of broadband right across the region. So in terms of what Intelsat and certainly what we have taken away from this whole experience is really beginning to productize services a lot more, such that any bill of material or equipment that's required to deploy a service is easily deployed, easily managed, that you have the ability to train staff in remote locations so that they've got the capability within their own country to go and deploy. And just simply making our products and services much simpler to deploy across all of the verticals which we support. So we've certainly taken the time in the last 12 months to ensure that we adapt our product offerings, that we strip away the complexity, but that we also work with our stakeholders across the Pacific to ensure that the capabilities reside in their own countries. So I think that's going to be a hangover effect from the coronavirus and what is the new normal. And I think it's a positive outcome, to be frank. Thanks, Phil. Over to you. You're on mute, mate. We're still getting that wrong. No, you're still on mute. There you go.
Forced on me by Fred, I think. Fred? Yeah, you touched on a point around capacity. Now we've found in this isolated phase that you have to build capacity urgently to continue to get things done. And I think an opportunity for those rising stars to really shine means that we've been able to refresh our resource and competency pools much faster than we would have evolved them in a normal pre-COVID-19 space. Our biggest challenge right now, our biggest investment is a forklift upgrade of our business support systems. And we chose a vendor out of Denmark. If any of you have gone for an major IT project remotely, I can tell you that's a scary proposition to do. But surprisingly, the project has progressed far more efficiently and on time and cost than I've ever experienced one where you have expertise in country. So I think when people support remotely, I think they have a higher level of discipline and commitment to keep making sure it seems to work. But yeah, lead times are pretty important. So the next one, Kong, if you got something from WCC.
Yes, thank you everyone. Hello, and thank you for welcoming WCC to this year's PITA event. It is our first time sponsoring and participating at PITA, and many of you may not be familiar with WCC, what we do. Hence, let me do a short introduction. We are headquarters in the Netherlands with a global presence. We have a vision to sustain and help protect communities, economies, and countries. Right now, we are assisting public employment agencies in many countries, including Germany, France, Belgium, the Netherlands, Malta, Costa Rica, Peru, Malaysia, Singapore. In border security, our technology is used in a number of countries, including the EU, Finland, Georgia, Thailand. Let me focus a little bit about what the pandemic has, affected the economies today. The pandemic has resulted in a global health crisis, and the economic impact has also led to dramatic consequences for employment. I think millions of people are losing their jobs every day, while others are at risk of unemployment, especially in countries where unemployment was already high. ILO, the International Labour Organization, estimated that 81 million jobs has been lost in APEC. And that's like a number of countries. Largely, some of these jobs that are lost are impacting youth and women. For example, youth unemployment in the Pacific Island is officially at more than 20%. In addition, informal workers, which form a large proportion of APEC workforce, has been falling through the cracks of social protection systems and are in need of immediate help. The countries that are getting hardest hit are the ones with a large proportion of migrant workers, such as the Pacific Island, as they are unable to support their migrant citizens when they migrate back home. So those citizens who are going back home, who has lost their job overseas, are unable to find employment. Data also shows that the pandemic has accelerated pre-pandemic trends of job transformation, creating skills mismatch in the workforce, affecting the unemployment rate even further. Now, it has accelerated trends like what you all have mentioned: remote work, e-commerce, supply chain, automation. So what are the options to strengthen the Pacific Island labor markets? And what are the roles that WCC solutions in labor market recovery? So understanding labor market trends has been crucial to our success and developing advanced IT solutions for labor market management and employment services. So our detailed knowledge of the public employment domain means that we have developed software that provides robust solutions. We have unique technologies such as high-performance search and match, skills matching, identifying educational opportunities, and active labor market policies that are critical to the success of our solution for public employment services. Now, Robert mentioned just now that you have problems getting skills worker into projects, and local workers need to be educated. But I suspect that a lot of local skills are not available right now. So how do you plan for these skills to be available in the future? In other words, our technology allows for the best opportunity for an unemployed person to find a job, and the employer the best way to find the right staff. The other angle the pandemic has also affected is the border securities of countries worldwide. Now, all governments are facing increasing demands to control illegal immigration, cross-border crime, while keeping their citizens safe. And more recently, the spread of COVID-19 pandemic has added health control to border checks priorities. So now, for example, you have an addition information to provide to the countries that you're entering, whether you're vaccinated or not. When was your test taken? So those information are in addition to the basic information. So passenger screening plays a crucial role in enabling government to ensure watertight security at air, sea, and land borders. Before the pandemic, ICAO in 2018 made it mandatory for all UN member states to operate an advanced passenger information system. How do border agencies handle the data once it's made available? And what is the role that security solutions play in managing large volumes of identity data to protect borders and citizens? So we provide that solution to many countries in Europe and also the APEC region. So our goal here in this forum, in this conference, is to share our knowledge and expertise in these two domains with representatives of Pacific Island, and to enable them to address the challenges and issues that are currently faced. Wishing all the participants a fruitful and enjoyable conference. Thank you.
Thank you, Con. We've got about 10 minutes before our time runs out. Does anybody have any specific questions or comments to make or clarifications from any of the panelists? If not, I'll ask Alistair. You know, Pacific launched at probably the best time ever. where, you know, shortly after launch, you were facing a totally different type of market. Was there any pre-COVID product that you had with Pacific that you had to substantially redefine or redesign to make it more relevant to the new world you're facing?
I'll be honest, our entire business model, and this was a question I actually asked when I joined the company. I said, how has COVID affected Pacific? And the answer was that it took us, spun us 180 degrees, turned us upside down, and then basically put us underwater. What we needed to do was entirely rethink our approach on how we dealt with our customers and what products we worked with. One of our biggest products was basically dedicated bandwidth pre-COVID. And then what we found is as we moved to a new world where people didn't know at that stage what was happening and for how long, and I mean, we still don't, as a number of the panelists have said tonight, but we didn't know where this world was going. So we moved to a model whereby we can start offering cheaper, more alternative packages for those customers who need to be connected for a short period of time and a short connection. So for us, from now until then, from then until now, our business approach has had to change entirely. Our flagship product that we dealt with back then is no longer our flagship product. And in fact, we have more conversations about our Gig Starter product every day than anything else. Yeah, I'd love to say that we were prepared. We walked into this and we knew what was going to happen. But I think when we walked into this, we walked into the biggest guy in the pub and sort of went, oh, we've got to change our approach to this entirely if we're going to survive. And we've done that to a point now where we're looking and going, right, well, do we actually need more capacity over some of our areas? Because what we're seeing is there's been such an uptake in our connectivity because people need it, that we need to evolve and we need to grow faster than we ever suspected. And 18, 24 months ago, some of the stuff that we're doing now would have never been on our radar. But now we look at it now and we see it's almost a no-brainer to choose what we're doing. So that's shown that we have to escalate our growth patterns and we have to be a lot more agile on our feet. And if we don't, then we're destined to be stuck. But luckily, we've taken the right path and we're growing at an exponential rate.
I suppose that's a great example of how most of us have had to rethink our whole product offering and how we can make it relevant in the new world. Joseph, I recall at a PITA meeting, probably about 2 years ago, a Telstra did a presentation on digital transformation, and I think it was Telstra, and talked about some of the challenges that you face in transforming a company from the analog domain to a digital domain. How have you seen COVID-19 change that transformation? Because I've seen it with our own business. If you didn't transform, you're basically stuck.
Yeah, I think so. And we've actually seen it accelerate. The transformation has accelerated quite rapidly, and everybody has probably gone through the same thing. For us, particularly with the way we had structured our business, we did have call centres that were based offshore, as an example. As those countries moved into lockdown at various times, you know, you've got to activate your BCP, you've got to call in human resources to assist with a lot of the work, given that the way we worked had changed so rapidly. So what we have seen is the use of apps, and we built in more capability for a particular app that we have that on the consumer side in particular, was able to deal with and handle any of our customer inquiries through chat. And also enabling the functionality, accelerated enablement of functionality of that app, as an example. We've now seen quite a substantial shift of people calling into our call centres to now using the app, and the app allows us to provision new services, add mood changes, purchase things, etc. So it's worked to the benefit. It's worked to obviously the benefit of our digital strategy as well, but also what we have found is that we've had to, from a wholesale perspective, which is the business unit I'm in, we've needed to also ensure that our OSS and BSS capabilities are there, and that we throw in resources to provide on-demand services. And we're seeing our business shift to be able to take that into account. So adaptive networks and how we move away from the old products, and there are quite a substantial amount of old products, and how we bring in those new products and how we make it easier for our customers to be able to order those products and automate end to end. So from your ordering, activation, assurance and billing, and how we make it easier for our customers to do so. And that's accelerated quite rapidly over the 12 months. It's part of our T22 strategy, as it's known. We've still got a bit to go, but we've hit a fair chunk of the milestones that we've set out by Andy, our CEO. But we do still have a fair way to go, and we're bringing in resources. So we may see from an employment perspective that skill set changes, and that you reduce roles in certain areas, but you also pick up skill set and you increase roles in other areas, particularly around digitization. So that's good, and you don't need to be in the office to do that anymore, right? You can be anywhere, and COVID has proven. So yeah, it's provided. It's been an interesting journey, and I think it'll continue to evolve as we go through that transformation and become more of a digital company.
Mm. Yeah, one of the upsides we've also seen is that user resistance to technology has evaporated predominantly because they've had no choice. Yeah. So we're just about at the end of the time limit we have. Unless anybody's got anything else that they'd like to add. No? So I think it's important that PITA recognises the contribution that the Platinum sponsors make to our events. And I want to thank each of you for making that commitment. And we'll definitely use this content to drive some of the conversations we're going to have at the AGM in a week's time. So on behalf of the Executive Committee of PITA, thank you very much. And we look forward to carrying on the conversation in a week's time. Plus, I'm still trying to figure out with Fred how we're going to have a virtual cocktail party, because I think that's a real important thing we're missing.
I was just about to ask that, because I was going to ask Joseph what color shirt he's going to wear later.
I'll have to get a shirt like Robert's, I think.
You need one like that.
Out. Yeah.
Yeah, we've got to think of some way of replicating that the social interaction that PITA's famous for.
I might have some ideas, Phil. I'll flick them over.
I'm sure you will, Joseph.
I'm ready.
All right, gentlemen and ladies, thank you very much. It's nearly 11 p.m. here in the Cooks. I'm sure it's earlier in your places, but have a good evening, and we'll see you in a week's time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
See you.